and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. Tonight is Sunday, January 6th, 2019. Tonight's topic, we have a special treat for you. It's a new feature. It is the Smaulgld Money Matrix, and I've put together a new and original matrix that will show you my thinking on how one determines whether a currency or a commodity ranks as money, as a currency, and what value it might have. I think it'll clear up a lot of some of the confusion that some people have when they hear me say gold and silver are not money, that gold and silver are dormant money, and they're not necessarily ideal as a medium of exchange currently. It ties into my whole gold is money, period. Gold has been money for 5,000 years. Horses are transportation. Horses have been transportation for 5,000 years. We're going to get into all that, but first, let's take a look at the gold and silver prices. They're pretty much flat. The markets have reopened, but they are flat. Silver's at 1567, exactly where it was when it closed on Friday, and gold is at 1284. And 10 cents where it closed on Friday as well. Now over in the cryptocurrencies, there's a different story. Bitcoin is at 6.5% higher at $4,047. I think that's the first time in a couple of weeks that Bitcoin has poked its head above 4,000. And Ethereum up to 156, up 1.19%. Bitcoin Cash up close to 4% at 165. But the real winner on the day, and the last 2 days really been leading the entire sector higher, is Litecoin. It had topped over $40 today. It's currently at $39. That's up 13% today, and it was up 13% yesterday, and has moved ahead of Stellar to take sixth place in the entire league tables for cryptocurrencies. I think you've got Bitcoin first, then Ethereum, then XRP, and then Bitcoin Cash, and then EOS, and then Litecoin. And Litecoin is pretty close to EOS, and at one point was ahead of Bitcoin Cash, but Bitcoin Cash made a big surge, like doubled a couple of weeks ago, and pulled back into fourth place. All right, let's get into, this is a very interesting chart that I've come up with. And it'll explain a lot of things, and you'll be able to put in your own numbers. And you'll be able to, when you see the charts, you'll be able to assign the value that you wish. So for example, let's pull up the charts that I've created. And I think you'll find this very useful, because not only will you be able to understand what I'm talking about, but I think you'll be able to understand how you view currencies, how you view gold, silver, Bitcoin, Litecoin, and cash. And where you place the value on those assets, and where the market places value on those assets. Okay, so what I've come up with is a money matrix, and the first component of it is a everyday currency score. The second component is how would that currency do in a currency crisis, whether it is a currency crisis caused by the United States dollar having a currency crisis, or whether it is a foreign currency crisis, and what would happen if there was a EMP or there was some type of other grid crisis. How would those currencies perform? And then the other portions of the matrix deal with the value of the currency, the intrinsic value, and its store of value. Then there's a little bit on at the end of the speculative value. And what I then do is I roll them all up into a grand score. And you'll be very surprised to see what finished first. Now, you may disagree with some of these, and I want to see in the comments afterwards, after you've had to think about this, if you think the values that I've assigned to these currencies are correct. Okay, so the first thing is we're just going to go through the typical, traditional ways you determine whether something is good money, meaning whether it can serve as a money as a currency and so on. So the first thing, it has to be durable, then it has to be divisible. I mean, you can break it into component parts. So diamonds are not good for currency. Why? Because you can't break them into different pieces. You can, but you ruin the value of the whole. Just like a horse is durable, but you really can't. You could divide. I mean, I guess when you cut it up for meat, but generally you need to have durability, divisibility, and then portability is very important. How do you carry it around or transfer the value? Fungibility, meaning diamonds are not fungible. There's some good diamonds, there's some bad diamonds, different cuts. And then there's how good is it to use as a medium of exchange or unit of account in everyday transactions. All right, so let's go through. And the big ones here that we're always talking about are the dollar in its digital form, meaning whether it's on a credit card, whether it's on a debit card, whether it's in your bank account, or let's say it's in the SWIFT system, or whether it's in a wire transfer system. That's the digital dollar. Then, of course, there's the dollar in cash, and that can be either in the form of currency notes or in nickels, dimes, quarters, pennies, and half dollars. And then we're looking at physical gold. We're not talking about gold on the blockchain, any digital representation of gold, but actual physical gold, physical silver, Bitcoin, and Litecoin. All right. So what I've done is I've assigned each of the dollar cash, physical gold, physical silver, Bitcoin, and Litecoin to a number based on each of the characteristics. So for durability, the dollar, and what I mean by durability, I don't mean by physical durability of the dollar. I mean the fact that expectations of the dollar existing, I give it a 6, and I give the cash a 6. Physical gold, I'm giving it 10. Gold is immutable. There's a few things that can destroy gold, but you have to purposely try to pour. I forgot the thing. There's something you can pour on gold and ruin and destroy it. But basically, gold can be at the bottom of the ocean for 500 years, 600 years, and nothing's going to happen to it. Silver pretty much is the same thing, although it does tarnish. So I gave physical gold and physical silver a 10 for durability. Bitcoin and Litecoin, I gave a 2 and a 1. Why? Because Bitcoin's been around 10 years and Litecoin's been around 7 years. And there's nothing to say that the current infrastructure of cell phones and blockchain and satellites and the way everything works with electricity and miners, that's going to exist in the future. More likely that the United States, I believe, and you can change these numbers around, is going to be around 20 years from now than Bitcoin or Litecoin. But I could be wrong. I assigned a very low number to Bitcoin and Litecoin and a higher number to the US dollar. Some people would disagree with that. Feel free to copy this and put your own numbers in. Divisibility. Well, the dollar, especially in its digital form and even in the cash form, works very well. You can break a dollar down into a half a dollar, a quarter dollar, a dime. You even have pennies. And of course, if you don't have pennies, you can still have cents in your digital dollars. Now, physical gold I gave a 6 to. Now, this is a 6 with a caveat. Technically, gold is probably more divisible than silver as an element. I mean, gold can be hammered into the finest and the thinnest of probably any element ever. But because gold is so expensive, in order to get 10 cents worth of gold, you wouldn't see it. So while you could divide gold into very small component parts, probably smaller than, and hammer them into tiny little coins than you could silver, it's just not practicable. So that is a 6 with a caveat because it actually should be a 10. But for practical purposes, you cannot have 10 cents worth of gold in any form that you'd be able to see. And you maybe you can have a thin bar, but you really it's a little it's cutting it a little too close to try to say you can make small amounts, pennies worth, 2 pennies worth of gold. Now silver is pretty good. I gave silver an 8. I mean, you can get it down to Generally, the smallest silver you'll see is a 10-cent size, and that's worth, about $1 or so. You could probably get it. You could probably make dimes half the size. And anything smaller than that, you're not going to really have much luck with. So, in terms of divisibility, the dollar in its digital form and even in cash form, you can get to lower denominations. Part of that's because of inflation, but that also will give silver and gold a benefit when we go into store of value and intrinsic value. So where they lose a bit, especially gold and silver in the divisibility, is in that they're too valuable to really divide into smaller pieces, especially gold. Now, Bitcoin and Litecoin are very good to, even better than the dollar and cash, because you can go out 8 places on a Litecoin if it's worth $30. You can go into 1/100ths, 1,000ths of a cent with Bitcoin and Litecoin if you wanted to. So they score very high for divisibility. Now, portability, small transactions under $100, really nothing works better than cash or digital credit cards. If you want to buy something for $100, the easiest way to do it, it's very portable. Carrying around $100 is not going to be that much trouble. If you have a $100 Franklin in your wallet, not a problem at all. Same thing if you got your credit card, you got your debit card, or you want to send somebody a wire. It's very easy to send $100, transact $100. Physical gold, I gave it a 2. It's kind of hard to transact in $100. Now you can buy a 1/10 of an ounce and pay $1,400 and a premium on it. Even though the gold price is not even $1,300, you're going to pay close to $1,400 for that. Then you're going to have to get change. So I gave that a 2. Now silver, for transactions around $100, you can do it. You carry 4 or 5 coins, and it's not bad. I gave that an 8. And Bitcoin and Litecoin, I gave 10s because it's very easy to create $100 worth of both of those and transact. Now for larger transactions, portability, very easy to transact in dollars. You want to buy a house, you want to buy a car, it's very easy to send the money, the digital US fiat, $1,000, no issue. Cash, not so much. You don't want to be carrying around $1,000 worth of cash, although 10 Franklins would not be that bad, but as you get into a $10,000 car, $15,000, $20,000 car, you're starting to get a little clunky on the amount of bills that you're carrying, especially if you can't get all hundreds. Physical gold is ideal for larger transactions because you have a gold coin, it's worth $1,200. Very easy to port around the right amount that you need. Although you have change making issues, but if you're buying something at $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000, you can just get change on the coins, and you can do it with 2 or 3 or 4 1-ounce gold coins. Very easy to bring along, transact if somebody's willing to take it. We're going to get into that. Silver, not so much for the large transaction. You don't want to be lugging around a monster box, 3 or 4 or 5 monster boxes to spend. I don't even know, what does a monster box cost? Monster box is under $10,000. So if you want to buy a car, you got to bring a couple of boxes. That's not very convenient. I know one does it anyway, but for large transactions, silver right now, while it's pretty good for small transactions, if you're in that circumstance and you're going to be transacting in silver, it's fine. But for larger transactions, you don't want to have to use silver. Bitcoin and Litecoin, not a problem. You can transmit Bitcoin and Litecoin. Doesn't matter the size. Very easy to transact. Fungibility, they all get a 10. That's why they're all currencies. A dollar is a dollar is a dollar, whether it's digital or whether it's a dollar in cash. An ounce of gold is an ounce of gold, whether it's got the queen on it, or it's got a Liberty walking lady on it, or whatever. And same with physical silver, whether it's an eagle or whether it's a maple leaf, it's an ounce, it's fungible. A Bitcoin is a Bitcoin, a Litecoin is a Litecoin. So they all get 10s for that. Now, in everyday use, just day to day, I'm not talking about crisis, I'm not talking about Venezuela, I'm not talking about the grid being down. The easiest thing to use and gets a 10 is the US dollar. And the empirical proof for that is your own experience. Every day you spend dollars. I would guess everyone on this live stream, and anyone who's listening to this later on will agree that they spend their money each day via dollars. Every day the dollar is accepted wherever you go. It's very easy to use as a medium of exchange, whether you're carrying cash around, whether you are sending money, writing a check, using your debit card, using a credit card. Dollars are a 10 for everyday use and acceptability, as is cash. Very few places won't take cash, so I gave it a 10. Almost every place takes cash, and almost every place will take some digital form of dollars. Gold, I gave it 1. Everyday life, you're not going to walk around and use gold. You'd have to make pre-arrangements. You're not going to go online and buy anything with gold. You're not going to go to the grocery store and buy gold, use gold. You're not going to go to the gas station and use gold. Same with silver. So I gave gold and silver a 1. You could, as we've seen above, for small transactions, pretty good to use silver, if you could. And gold for large transactions might even be better than lugging cash around. The larger the transaction, I mean, you could bring 2 gold coins instead of half a suitcase worth of bills. So gold is pretty good for large transactions, and silver is pretty good for small transactions. But for everyday acceptability, they're not. Bitcoin too. Bitcoin I gave a 2 and Litecoin a 1. Try buying your everyday goods with Bitcoin and Litecoin. I hear people, Bitcoin fanatics, I could buy everything in Bitcoin. Yeah, you have to really try. You really have to go out of your way to try to spend your Bitcoin for your daily needs. You can't go to the grocery store, or you might have one grocery store, and you might have a gas station, and you might have a hairstylist, and you might have whatever service you want to buy that accepts Bitcoin or Litecoin. But really, and you might find a Lambo dealer that accepts Bitcoin or Litecoin. But for the most part, you cannot walk around and do your daily transactions in Bitcoin or Litecoin. Cash is king, dollar is king. So as a currency, if you look at my total everyday currency scores, the dollar wins, especially in the digital form, because it's even easier to use the dollar for whatever reason you need. So it gets a 56, cash gets a 52, gold gets a 38, silver gets a 39. Bitcoin and Litecoin beat gold and silver with a 44 and 42 based on the numbers I've given them. Now, this is where everybody starts complaining and screaming and yelling, but gold and silver are value. Gold and silver are real money. We're going to get to that. This is only talking about as a transactional vehicle. And you can see here, there are advantages over cash to gold and silver. If you can't see that, there's no point in going on to the next 2 topics. The next 2 parts you're going to like, but this part you should have agreement with. The fact that gold and silver have value, gold have been money, silver have been money for 5,000 years, doesn't override what you're looking at right now. Gold and silver are not ideal medium of exchange. What they could be, we're not talking about that yet. In today's, this is about everyday use in a modern functioning economy. Gold and silver are not as good as dollars or even Bitcoin and Litecoin because of the inability to transact on a daily basis in a convenient way. It's far more convenient to transact in dollars than it is in gold and silver. And it's more convenient to transact in Bitcoin and Litecoin in many circumstances than it is to transact in gold and silver. Now remember, I always say that doesn't mean that gold and silver don't have value. It means they now fail almost miserably as a medium of exchange in the modern world. We're not talking Venezuela. We're not talking EMPs. We're not talking currency crisis. We're going to get to that. But what I've done is I've broken it down. So let's just look at this. Keep a snapshot of this in your head. That as an everyday currency, there's a reason the dollar has value. The reason the dollar has this value is it is superior to transact in. It's accepted everywhere. It's easy to move around. All right, let's go to the second component. Now, we're not done here. The dollar wins this round. And Bitcoin and Litecoin came in second, and gold comes in last in this particular round. The reason gold fails here is because You can't buy a cup of coffee with gold. Not in the physical form. Figure out how much $5 worth of gold is and try to chip off a little piece of gold. You can't do it. $3, you can't do it. So gold is not a good currency in that regard. All right, let's look at the next component of the Smaulgld matrix. What about, though, because this is the what abouts that a lot of you are going to be into, a currency in a crisis. We're going to give these currencies valuations in a crisis. So, do the same thing as we did in normal times, usability as a medium of exchange or unit of account. Let's say there is a non-US currency crisis. Well, the acceptability of the dollar is still going to be a 10. In fact, if you go to Argentina or Venezuela in a currency crisis, they will take your dollars. That's exactly what they want. I've been there during those times, not Venezuela, but Argentina. They want the dollar. So, dollar gets a 10. Dollar cash, even more, gets a 10. If you have gold down there, absolutely, that gets a 10. Silver gets a 10. I think Bitcoin and Litecoin might get lower because if you are looking to transact, you may not want Bitcoin and Litecoin, but they'd still be valuable in a non-US currency crisis. Now, in a US currency crisis, the dollar is 0. I mean, what are you going to do with it? Cash, 0. I mean, it's going to devalue right away as soon as you get it. Gold is, as a medium of exchange, will be an 8. Silver would get a 10. Nothing is going to beat silver in a U.S. currency crisis. Why? People know what it is to a certain extent because you can show them a dime, quarter, and a half dollar as just being the same coins except they have silver in them. It's not that hard to explain what an ounce of silver is. So silver in a U.S. currency crisis would probably have the highest acceptability of any of these things here. The question is, how do you value that value? So while silver gets a 10 here, how likely is a U.S. currency crisis? Now, most people listening to this podcast would probably give that a higher value. The reason the price of silver is low is the rest of the country and the other market participants don't think that they need to have silver in the event of a U.S. currency crisis. Yes, indeed, if there was a U.S. currency crisis, the price of silver probably would, quote, skyrocket. But the question is, what is the likelihood? And obviously, people who buy a lot of silver think that that likelihood is a lot higher than people who don't buy silver. But I would give it a 10. I think Bitcoin and Litecoin would also do well, but not as well, so I gave them a 7 and a 5. Now, what if there is a grid crisis? Well, if there's a grid crisis, the U.S. digital dollar is a 0. What are you going to do? You can't get online. Your bank account isn't working, so it's a 0. Cash would go to a 10. Gold, I think, would go to a 7 just because if there was cash around, I think people would rather have the cash than the gold because you can't transact the gold the same way because as we talked about, it's hard to transact in gold for small amounts. Silver would be a 9. Probably not as good as cash, but I think people would appreciate having the silver value in small divisible parts that they could use in a grid crisis. Obviously, Bitcoin and Litecoin would be close to 0 in a grid crisis, EMP, solar flare, because you wouldn't be able to get online, you wouldn't be able to use them. Now, let's talk about a crisis-ish type of situation. While the dollar is very good as long as they let you use it, but remember, countries like India can shut off their currency. They can declare that the rupee that you have is no longer worth anything unless you get new rupees. They can say, like they did in Sweden after a certain date, the 1982 kroner is no longer worth anything. Censorship resistant. Now, the dollar in your bank account, this is just my guess, is not censorship resistant. They can close your bank account just because they don't like you. We're seeing that now with PayPal and things like that. They can easily move up the chain. The government can say, we don't like what you're doing. We don't like what you're talking about. We're going to take your dollars. Now, it's harder for them to take cash. So I gave that a 2. It's harder for them to take your cash. But what they can do, and this is why I gave it a 5 and not anything higher, they can do something like any bills made after 2015 are no longer any good for whatever reason, because they want to issue new ones and they want to catch out all the old people. So physical gold, however, is censorship resistant. It is a 10. Physical silver is a 10. They cannot stop you from owning. They can confiscate it, but that's not the same thing as being able to stop you. Yeah, sure, they can come and take it from you, just like they can try to shut down the entire internet and stop you from using Bitcoin and Litecoin. But those moves are very impractical because they basically require the government or the controlling entity to close everything in order to get your gold or silver or to get your Bitcoin or Litecoin. So in that sense, physical gold, physical silver, Bitcoin, and Litecoin are censorship resistant, whereas the dollar, so far we don't really have any problem. We don't really hear widespread issues. But if there is some type of crisis, you could see the government can call its money. They can call on the banks to close the banks. Even if they're not specifically targeting you, they can close the banks, and your dollars that are held digitally in your bank account are not censorship resistant. You won't be able to get at them. The bank's closed. You're done. So, unlike in a normal everyday situation where the dollar ruled, in this case, the dollar in a crisis currency, its crisis currency score is the worst, especially if it's in a digital form. It only gets a 12. Dollar cash, a little better, 25. But notice how physical gold and silver win the day here. Physical gold gets a 35 ranking, silver even higher. This is where silver's biggest advantage is when you have some type of currency crisis, US or otherwise, a grid crisis, and it also is not going to be susceptible to censorship because you have your silver, you have your silver. Bitcoin and Litecoin do well in this circumstance, but remember I included grid crisis acceptability, which is a 0. So in these currency crisis, grid crisis, censorship issues, US or otherwise currency crisis, gold and silver win, and silver wins the biggest. But Bitcoin and Litecoin would have done almost as well, not quite, if you pull out the grid crisis acceptability. All right, so now we've done everyday currency, crisis currency. Now let's look at value. Now, the value of a currency. What is the intrinsic value of a dollar in a bank account, a dollar's cash, physical gold and silver, Bitcoin and Litecoin? Well, there is 0 intrinsic value in the dollar. There is 0 intrinsic value in, well, probably a half a cent's worth of paper in the cash. And there is some some intrinsic value in pennies, dimes, nickels, half dollars, and quarters. But for the most part, it's a 0. Physical gold is a 10 in intrinsic value. One of the most desired metals. I apologize for that. Went down again. I don't know where we got cut off, but all right. I was talking about intrinsic value, and I mentioned that the dollar has none. The cash has none. That physical gold, most desired asset probably ever, is a 10 for intrinsic value. Silver I gave an 8. Arguably, people can give it a higher number if they want, a lower number if they want. I just gave gold 10. Now, Bitcoin and Litecoin have zero intrinsic value. And a lot of Bitcoiners and Litecoiners, this is where they get all excited and they start saying, oh, but it's trustless, it's a network and you can't shut it down and it's based on math. And yeah, but that doesn't give it intrinsic value. It gives it other value, and we've already accounted for that value in other parts of the chart. But this is where many people think in this binary fashion or this worship of an asset. They find it very difficult that whatever asset they're in love with, whether it's Litecoin, Bitcoin, gold, or silver, that it has any flaws or any shortcomings. When I say gold is not money and silver is not money, people lose their minds. And I said, well, you can't really transact with, oh, but you could if there was an if you were in Venezuela, and they give you all that kind of nonsense. It's the same when you tell them Bitcoin and Litecoin have no intrinsic value. They insist that it has value. Yeah, it might, but it doesn't have intrinsic value. There's nothing you can do. There's no value in a Bitcoin or Litecoin as a Bitcoin or Litecoin, not attached to a system, a operating system. It's only value, and it's a very big value, is when you're able to transact in it. But in and of itself, it has no intrinsic value. Now, next one, store of value. Now, people might take issue with this, but the dollar I give a 6 because even though it loses value, and you know everyone knows the old story, since the Federal Reserve has lost 90-some-odd% of its value. Yes, but in the short run, in a year or two, the dollar does hold its value, and that's a function of the entire global fiat system, the way it operates, the dollar index. The dollar does hold a certain amount of value, at least for a couple of years. And remember, this is a key here, part of its value is, its store of value is based on the fact that so many people use it and transact in it, so it does have some store of value. And the reason I gave it a 6 in digital form is if you leave it in the bank, you might get a little interest. In cash, you're obviously not going to gain any interest, and it's going to depreciate. Physical gold, I gave a 10 as a store of value. Physical gold outperforms the dollar, as we've seen, 70-80% of the years. And it outperforms basically every other fiat currency almost every year. Silver I was a little generous with. I gave it an 8. I should have given it probably a 7 because silver doesn't always outperform fiat currencies. But the reason I gave it an 8 is over a 20-year period, given its spikes and its dives, you might end up with an okay value. You'll end up ahead versus the fiat, but you might be at a period for 3 or 4 years where you lose money. So it's not the same store of value as gold. Bitcoin, I gave a 2 as a store of value. I don't see how you can go from 20. I don't care what people say. Yeah, oh, it went as high as 20,000. Well, if it's 3,000 now or 4,000 now, it lost 70-80% of its value. Anytime anything loses 70 or 80% of its value in a year, you can't call it a store of value. Oh, but if you bought it in 2011, but I didn't. Not I didn't, but that's not the point. It's only around 10 years. You cannot ascribe anything higher than a 2 to Bitcoin as a store of value. That doesn't mean it doesn't score high as a medium of exchange, but it does mean it is not a store of value. Litecoin, even worse, it gets a 1. So the big winner in value, and this is really these two items here, intrinsic value and store of value, have nothing to do with medium of exchange and currency. Now, a lot of people say, well, these are the money characteristics. Yes, they are. And in fact, one could value these higher than transacting. But transacting is one of the main reasons people own items, or own currencies, because of the ease of transaction. And this is why I say what most people do when they buy gold and silver, 99% of them is, they don't transact in it, they hoard it, and they throw it in a vault, or they store it somewhere. And so that's a big difference. So gold and silver here wipe the floor with dollars and Bitcoin. But a lot of gold bugs and silver fanatics, this is the only part they see. This is the part they see. And the part they see is, and therefore gold and silver are worth more than dollars. Yes, if you're going to store them, I don't disagree with that. But if all you're going to do is store them, that means that their monetary medium of exchange is dormant and you have to take away a little bit of their value. Now, how much you take away, I don't know. That's up to you. But I know if you like gold and silver, you're going to overvalue the crisis component, the ability for that dormant medium of exchange component to come back. You're going to value that much higher than the average population is going to. In fact, the average population isn't going to give it much value at all. Now, you could be stupid or whatever the reason is, which would mean in your mind, you're achieving insurance at a low rate. That's why you like when the price goes down. You're going to buy more because when there's a currency crisis or when there's an EMP, you're going to be ruling the roost. But remember, if those things don't happen, then you know where you are? You are back here. And in my matrix, you're better off having cash. Now, ideally, if you're thinking this all through, you have cash for transacting, and you have your gold and silver, not as money, period, but as a store of value, and probably gold as a store of value. Now, where if you take the everyday currency score, which we're going to see right there, which cash won, and then you add it to the total crisis score, which gold and silver won, and then you add it to the intrinsic value and store of value, which of the dollar, digital, dollar, cash, gold, physical silver, Bitcoin, or Litecoin win in the total score? And again, this is my rankings, but the thing is, these are all equally weighted. But you'll be interested to see if you weight all of the characteristics equally. Look what wins. Silver. Why does silver win? Because silver is probably, of all of these, and it picks up most of its points in a crisis situation as a barter currency. Because you cannot transact in Bitcoin and Litecoin if the lights go out. People say, oh, it's in a satellite. For all intents and purposes, Bitcoin and Litecoin aren't going to do you any good when the lights go out. The internet is down. It's not going to help. Gold's not going to help as much either. Silver is the easiest. Your digital dollars aren't going to help very much. Silver will be the easiest way to transact. So that's where silver wins. And silver wins because it has a store of value. But the issue here is these are raw scores. You can't rank all of these components equally. I did. Now, this is your homework assignment. Go through all of these. Assign your own numbers to each of these. And then assign a value. How important is it? Is it really important to have an EMP currency? Is that more important than having an everyday currency? Now, the argument would be, it doesn't matter until it does. But it does, because if you're going to have 1,000 days without an EMP, then you have, not only do you have a dormant store of value in silver, but you have a dormant currency during that time period. Whereas during those 1,000 days, you could be transacting in your dollars or your Bitcoin or your Litecoin. All right, let's see what you guys think of this. This is the Smaulgld money matrix. And on a raw score, what comes out worst is Litecoin and best physical silver. Now, this isn't investment advice. This is just if you look at each of these characteristics. And you can add your own, and you can discount the values. These are all weighted the same. But it depends on what you're doing. If you're in an everyday environment, well, then you saw that the worst thing to have is silver, because you can't transact in it, and its store of value is lower than gold. But if you're going to add a lot of value to EMPs and currency crises and not U.S. currency crises and getting censored or kicked off the grid, then silver's a very big winner. The question is, how likely are all or any of those things to happen? Hope that clears everything up, because this is how I think of things. I actually think this in my head. I had to write it all out, but this is why I say when people get all excited about silver, they're excited about more remote events, I think, and the market thinks that are actually likely to happen. Now, is it good to have these things in an emergency? Absolutely. But the question is, how likely is it? And then also, remember, in an emergency, like an EMP or currency crisis, your ability to buy stuff is severely hampered anyway, because there's not going to be a free flow of goods and exchanges the way there is in the normal functioning economy. So I always tell people to get all excited, what about Venezuela? I say, well, take your silver and go down there and buy stuff. There's nothing to buy there. All right, let's see what you guys have been thinking. I hope you appreciate it or understood that. I don't know if that's how I think. I don't know if you think that way in a grid. But let's see. All right, let's see what we got here. Andrew is here. De La Villa is here. Don't Be Stupid is here. And Holloman is here. Litecoin bottom. Yes, it did indeed. DB Stu, don't be, the wife is out of town. I can crank up the live stream. Well, the minor pleasures of having Smaulgld yelling game over and game changer in your house. I'm sure your wife doesn't like to hear that. All right, what else do we got here in these? That's the live chat. I got to get to the. I'm not getting. There it is. Okay. All right. Let's see. It's not really the gold weight is off. I don't know what that means. Maduro can't get his gold back. Why? We'll talk about that another time, Pablo. Maduro sold it. No, let's see. I want to get into what people thought of this matrix here. Mark Battaglia, Bitcoin both have more value than the Boulevard. Well, that's true. All right. Jack AG. In a collapse, I would accept gold for service. Okay, that's my personal opinion. Would anyone else here accept gold for something they had lots of? I don't think it's an issue, Jack, of people not accepting it. I think in a crisis, people would accept it. But let's say you've got like a box of matches and you want to sell them and somebody says, oh, I'll give you gold for it. How are you going to figure out how much, even if you're going to overprice the box of matches to $20? It's going to be hard to get that transaction done in gold because most people aren't going to have all types of different denominations of gold because most likely most people are not even going to have an ounce and they're not going to have it in all fine forms. Yeah, I would take it if somebody can give me $20 worth of gold, but that's hard. Now, silver's a lot easier to give you $20 and people, I would accept the silver. Okay. Chrono Trigger fan. Gold is for leaving a collapsed nation for greener pastures. Yes, because if you, and so is Bitcoin. So if you want to leave a country, it's very hard and you have any amount of wealth, anything over $1,000. It's kind of hard to sneak $1,000 worth of silver anywhere because it's a lot of coins. I mean, it's, how much is 1,000? How many ounces would you have at today's price of 1,000 divided by 15? You'd have 66 coins. That's not an insignificant amount. But in gold, you can have an ounce of gold, and you're gone. Bitcoin, you don't have to do anything. Just wherever you go, you just reactivate your keys, and you get the Bitcoin there. Yes, I agree, Chrono Trigger fan. It's not for creating a barter economy. It's too expensive. You can't trade in gold. And that's why gold is not money in a certain extent. Because it's become too valuable as a store of value. People get mad when I say that. It's not a cut on gold that it's not money. It's not. Because money has a medium of exchange unit of account component, which gold is pretty much gotten rid of by being so expensive. Silver still has it because it's cheap. But that's why silver isn't as good of a store of value as gold is. I hope people understand that every asset has its pros and cons. It just seems that if you like silver, silver is money, period. Or gold, gold is money, period. Bitcoin, Bitcoin will change the world. Litecoin, Litecoin is the right coin. You just hear these people say that, and they have there's no downside to their favorite asset. There's downsides to all of them. This is a good point Mark makes. Jack, what if you're the only person in your area who accepts gold? Okay. Now, that's a very important point. Like in today's world, it doesn't matter about your area because you can find someone outside your area you can sell it to. But let's say you're in a collapse situation like Jack is, and Mark And here are the only two people that know anything about gold. And Mark decides he wants to buy something from Jack. Mark brings over his 1 ounce gold coin, gives it to Jack for a significant amount of supplies. And, you know, $1,000, $1,200 worth of supplies. And Jack is thinking, well, I'll just be able to turn this into something else that I might need. And nobody in the area wants anything to do with his gold coin. Well, Mark is made out like a bandit because he's gotten rid of a useless, or at least for now, gold coin. And the velocity of money in this circumstance that Jack has, Jack can't do anything with a gold coin. So it's a very good point that Mark is making. And it's a good point that Jack is making, that he would take it because in a sense he's thinking, well, that's smart. I'm going to get the gold at a good price because I'm going to charge them $20 for a box of matches that I paid $3 for. All right. I would accept gold for a skilled trade, but I like the idea of what if other people won't accept what you're going to on-sell? Unless you like the gold you have, but the only reason you like it is because you'll be able to use it as a currency at one point. It's a store of value when you get it until you spend it. But again, with gold, it ends up being a permanent store of value, and you have to sell it in large dollar quantities, and in a collapse, that's probably not likely. All right, let's see. No, yeah, I went down. We heard that. Mark Battaglia is Charlie Lee shutting Lewis down. The Russians, and he's back. Okay. How did gold even get here then? It started somewhere. Screen is blurry. Oh, you can't see those charts? Well, tomorrow on the show notes, I'll have all the charts that go through it. Oh, how did gold get here? I believe they say it was it's some kind of cosmic thing where the stars collide and it lands into the earth, asteroids. I have no idea. It's definitely it's a rare event that happens and it creates gold. Asteroids, as Mark is saying. Miser, holding value right now. Small gold mug with hot chocolate. Well, you'll find mugs, seriously. I'm not kidding around here. Mugs are very valuable in a crisis situation. Not only can you put your mountain house in them, you could put your silver coins in them, you could put your water in them. There's so many things you can do with a mug. You can barter the mug itself, and you can keep your... Here's a mug with silver in it, okay? That was from KV. And then I have a mug with gold in it from ASMR. Let's see that one. Never get this kind of mug. This is Roger Henley's mug. Don't get the fake mug to the right. That's a knockoff. That's an imitation Smaulgld mug. But you can put a lot of things in mugs, and you can trade them and put water in them. And I have a picture, which I like the most, that shows you could put cognac in a mug. You know, if you've got some cognac, there you go. There's your cognac in the mug. It's a very nice looking soundboard there. But the picture I want to show you, which is my favorite, there you go. And you could put Mountain House in a mug. All right, let's see. If a collapse happened, no one would care about gold. That's right. How did we get in this place in time where gold is so valuable? There's something about gold that it really is the Gollum thing. My precious. There is something about that. People see it and they lose their minds. They want it. It's shiny, but it's not shiny and cheap. It's actually shiny and substantive. That's why I say when people try to say silver is like gold, it really isn't. Not at the precious level. Even though platinum is rarer, it doesn't. In fact, silver is a better looking metal than platinum. Platinum is more gray. All right, let's see. Mark. This gold was used as money, is now used as jewelry. Everything else we can touch and see has value. That's correct. Jack. So persons would care about and take gold for a service in a collapse. Take gold. I think they would take anything that everyone agreed would serve as a medium of exchange in that community. I don't see how gold... Now, it's possible that people would take gold, but the only way gold would be taken would be it'd have to be cut in price by tenfold, which would mean anybody who's saving gold now for the collapse, thinking they're going to barter in it, they're making a grave error, because probably the only way you'd ever barter in gold is if it was a lot cheaper. Never thought of that one before. That's in, people think, oh, in the collapse I'll be rich. No, you might be poor, because the gold would become more worth less. All right, Chrono Trigger fan, gold doesn't deteriorate and has relative rarity. That's right. It's pretty easy to see why it was used as money. Even silver were tarnished and oxidized. That's right. Gold is more valuable than silver from that perspective. Mark, not exactly. If 95% of the people don't care about gold, now they won't care about it in a collapse. In fact, that's my point. They'll care about it less, and it'll be worth even less than it is. Well, it will be worth less than it is today. Chrono Trigger fan, just ask the wealthy Venezuelans who shackled up in Colombia over the past 2 years were the former commune bloc engineers that came to the States. I think you're talking about holding gold. Jack, 95% is a number you made up. He's talking about Mark. I would say, I don't know if that's, care is hard to tell, but we know probably it's pretty easy to infer that less than 5% of the people in the United States hold investment gold or silver, which would mean, assuming all of those that do hold it care, and those that don't hold it, I'm sure there's some that don't hold it, that want to hold it, that do care. Might be a good estimate. It's hard to tell. And Mark said it might be lower. That's right. KZ Gixer 1000. Silver is an optimal physical money due to its antimicrobial properties. Well, copper has that too. Yes, but remember, physical money itself, at least in my matrix, is not the optimal money. Digital money is optimal. As long as the grid is working, it's far better and easier to transact in non-specie. But yes, once you're back into specie, silver is very good for that. Bleach is not found in nature. All right. Jack, we've been conditioned. Let's see. I lost. There's too many comments here. Where's Jack? Whoa, here we go. All the way here. We've been conditioned by the government to think fiat is real wealth. That's why no one buys gold. Why would you need it? Right? And the question is, that's the way of the world. Whether it's right or wrong, there's where the value is. All right, let's see. Miser, Pablo Pina, you get the game changer. Every time I see game changer, I get really skeptical, says Andrew. Yeah, because it's a bunch of nonsense. All these pumper channels, game over, game changer. It's always a game changer. LOL, you're talking about a Smaulgld MVP. Jack AG, silver's kicking ass in a collapse if that's true. Yeah. That's my guess. I mean, see, people think I'm against silver. I'm against the over hyping of silver, because what they do is they bring forward fantastical situations into reality that aren't necessarily likely from a probability standpoint, but yet they assign the value to it as if they're imminent and likely. That's the problem I have. I'm not saying it's not smart to have made preparations for certain scenarios. That's different than planning on them happening next week. And that is what I think a lot of people do. They get silver derangement syndrome and they think silver is rarer than gold. And in the collapse, whoa, you're already assuming a collapse. You've assumed everything. You've assumed all of the fantastical scenarios that are possible but not necessarily probable. All right, let's see. Chrono Trigger fan, people didn't trade silver dollars because they could preserve milk with them, but it is an ancillary benefit. That's right. That's the antimicrobial benefits of silver. Anything you preserve in a collapse is good. Milk wealth, right. Mark Patel, if you're starving and had 20 pounds of rice, who would trade rice for gold? You have no assurance you could use the gold for other things. Rice is more important. Right. The only way you would do that is if you had so much rice. And now you know that this collapse is going to be over in a year, 2 years. And eventually, gold will retain its value for people who are accumulating wealth. Remember, in a collapse, you're not accumulating wealth. You're accumulating goods and services that you need to survive. You're not trying to get rich. But eventually, that's what happens in any capitalist or free market. there starts to be a surplus and people start to save their surplus, and they're going to save it in gold or silver. It's a very interesting conversation here. All right, let's see. You would need the gold to buy water to cook the rice. Chrono Trigger fans, that's why Konkin's contribution to Austrian economics is so important, but ignored. All value is subjective, as Mark Battaglia says. That's right. And Chrono Trigger fan, I had the other night, I was talking to people, they misinterpret the Austrian economists as being in favor of gold as some type of economic law. I mentioned the other night that Mises talks about human action, and Rothbard talks about not the government creating a gold standard, but the people creating a gold standard, because that's what they chose, because that's what made sense through the ages to pick as something that was the best money, it was divisible, it was fungible, and so on. But as time goes on, and then people get annoyed when gold has been money for 5,000 years, period. They get annoyed when I try to explain to them that gold doesn't operate very well as a currency. Well, it could, Venezuela. No. Even in Venezuela, gold is not good for a medium of exchange. Litecoin is the right coin. You wouldn't trade a fur coat for a ton of gold if you're naked and stranded in Alaska, right? And you wouldn't trade your water bottle for a thing of gold if you had another 3 days to cross the Sahara. All depends. Back to the animal kingdom, and they don't care about gold. That's right. In fact, that's a very good point, Jack. All of this is why when people raise Venezuela, it is a cringe-worthy event when people say that. You're not better off in Venezuela with gold than you are in the United States without gold. You're living in a very dangerous and society. The fact that you have gold or silver to protect you, no, you don't. You have more protection owning, quote, worthless dollars in a bank account, living in a bad area in the United States, than you do living with gold or silver in Venezuela. That's the thing, that when you have gold derangement syndrome, you somehow think, well, if Venezuela happens, I'm all ready. I got my gold, I got my silver. You don't got jack. They don't have anything for you to buy there anyway. As Chrono Trigger fan says, you can get out of Venezuela maybe if you have gold. That's about it. All right, let's see. Gold is universal. Aliens accept it. Aliens want it, Pablo. That's correct. Chrono Trigger fan, you will need to hand out free copies of G. Edgar Griffin's books with every ounce. Well, that book is good. That is the book Creature from Jekyll Island, talks about the number that the Federal Reserve did on the money. Chrono Trigger fan says he's out of here. He's got to go. He's got to do some grocery shopping. Should I bring my silver dimes to see if Kroger's has started accepting them yet? No, and that's why silver is dormant money, and that's why I discount the value of silver versus add a premium to it for what might happen. Because in my view, it's more likely tomorrow we won't have a crisis than we will. And holding on to silver means I can't use it. I can't spend it. I have to store it. So I'd rather not have the silver. And if I was going to store something, I'd rather have a vault of gold somewhere in another country. Because if there's a U.S. currency crisis, well, then the store is still there. All right, let's see. Gold is created from neutron star collisions. I think that's the right answer, Andrew. Yes. Gold is my labor locked up in a token, says don't be stupid. That's correct. KX Gixer 100. Is gold more valuable or dollars less valuable? It's kind of a semantic question, but I get the point. Miser, you may need gold, you may not, depending on the situation. That is correct. But I guarantee you most likely won't need it as a medium of exchange. And the only way it probably would be a medium of exchange if you were going to lose money on it, because it would have to be cheaper to use it as that way. But you're right. Either way, it'll hold value very likely the best period. Yes, as a block somewhere sitting, waiting for you to cash that value in at some point. That I do believe. Fine wine is rare, says Jack. Yes, but fine wine goes bad. Fine wine is harder to store. Once you open the bottle of wine, it's not like you can then say, you'd have to sell it immediately if you wanted to break it into component parts. Now, something like whiskey or vodka or cognac, does make a very good, it can be very good as money. You can put in little 1 ounce shots. The only problem with the biggest difference between gold, silver, and whiskey is whiskey can only be used once. You can't, once you drink it, it's finished. That's the only difference, but it is portable, it is divisible, it is fungible. To store value, you have a whiskey, could be worth more in 5 years. But once you drink it, it's done. Whereas you can't transfer your whiskey. You can transfer the undrunk whiskey, but you cannot transfer used whiskey, so to speak. Andrew, guys, get a little everything. That makes sense. Andrew, gold, silver, crypto, and learn to trade so you understand the markets. Buy land. Stacking assets. I guess you came here late. Why is there a picture of Pasta Primavera on the screen? That's to show that Mountain House, which is a prepper item in a collapse, can be cooked in Smaulgld mugs. There's your perfect fact. I have on the Patreon account the Smaulgld Smug Mug Club, and for $50 a month, you will get both the Smaulgld mugs. You join for 1 month, you get both of them. You don't have to keep paying $50 a month, although you could. But then if you had both mugs, you could mix your Mountain House in there. That's why that's up there, stacking assets. All right, DP, don't be stupid, says. Now, you have a comment here that is being held for review. Oh, because you used the word excrement. Okay, but I'll read your comment. Ponder this. If some guy has a few rental properties, yes, and a guy who rents has gold, okay? If the economy is bad, the renter will become a homeowner rather than the homeless. Let me think that through. Yes, as long as the people don't come and take his gold. That's correct. Gold started somewhere. That's the argument. Pasta is good, says Ann Holloman. Absolutely. Mugs from China are flooding the market. Hello, American Super Tramp. Good in carbohydrates, too. Jack AG. Okay, Mark, I see your argument now. If the faith in people were to barter pasta, a $20 bill would be worthless, also gold. Tossing Molotovs. Arguing that gold is money and nothing else is a problem. Absolutely. And arguing that it's always been money, that's a problem too. That's my horses are transportation, period. Horses have been transportation for 5,000 years. And negating the car. It's not the same. No, it's very similar. It's a very good analogy. If horses have become an asset, horses have not become a primary means of transportation, just as gold and silver are no longer primarily used to transact. If people believe turds are money, then turds are. That's right. That's the human That's the human action, Austrian School of Economics component. And I think all economics, any school will tell you that what people use as money is what money is. There's no law. Like Ron Paul thinks there's the law of nature, that gold is money, period. No. If no one uses it, it doesn't even matter why they don't use it. Even if it's because the government has brainwashed everybody not to use it and not to like it. Well, then if the brainwashing is complete and no one's thought about gold as money for 50 years and people are born into the world and they don't use gold as money, they don't go to school with gold coins in their pocket, they never see gold, then gold is not money. But it should be. Well, it isn't. So I agree with you tossing Molotovs. Jack AG, love it small, thanks for being there. It's all about sentiment, which we can't control, says Mark. That's right. And a lot of people think that their sentiment rules. It doesn't. That's what I was talking about the other night. What you think or what you insist is true. We had this discussion with J&R Innovations, insisting that cryptos were the worst thing ever. I could agree with that, but that's not going to make them go away. That's not going to make the markets not give them value. Then we had another very good comment. He said, well, only 1% of the population even holds cryptos. Doesn't matter. That 1% is what gives them value. Just like even fewer people are in the market for Jackson Pollock paintings. Doesn't matter. They still have value. You may not buy them. You can get 150 people to tell you that those paintings are crap. You would never buy one. You could probably even get a petition going on what is that site? And get 900,000 people to sign a petition that says that we think that Jackson Pollock paintings are crap. That's still not going to change anything. So that's what people don't understand. They think their point of view Or even worse is when they think somebody popular, like Peter Schiff says, doesn't matter. He's not making, and it's not a cut against Peter, it's just he's not the one in charge of the market. So sometimes he says, once the markets figure out that I'm right, once you have more hubris than the markets, that's never going to happen. All right. People want to be better than animals. That's why we believe in God. Well, that's an interesting point. Pablo Pina, in Australia now, to have gold saved is good to keep or cash in to get more Australian dollars for the conversion. Right. All right. Let's see. I've always wondered about the whiskey thing in preppers. Well, you know, it's the same with like toys and cards. People say that there is some type of collapse. A lot of times people forget that life will go on, and people that get drunk every now and then are going to want to get drunk, and they may not have prepped whiskey, and you could sell little bits of whiskey. People will have some spare time, and once they figure out how to live, they don't necessarily have the lights on, but they might want to play cards by candle, and they don't have cards, so you can sell a pack of cards. Pre-1982, pennies are money. Anything else is credit, and debts is Max Strong. Amen. Yes, Jack, because people, says Mark, want to get drunk in a collapse. Right. All right, let's see. Jack, I've heard that in economics class, which I did not take, they don't teach about gold. That's right, and there's a reason for it. It's kind of a catch-22. They don't teach about it because they don't want you to know about it, but it's also not in the... Gold is not... See, when people insist, look at all the money they're creating, and that's going to make the price of gold rise. Why? Money is not relative to gold because gold is not money. How can you say that gold is money, period? Gold has been money for 5,000 years. Silver, even worse. One can argue that gold is connected to the monetary system because central banks in the monetary system hold gold reserves. But even a country like Russia, where everybody says, oh, they're stacking gold hand over fist, they know what's coming. Nonsense. They got $80 billion worth of gold at today's prices. And that's the 5th largest central bank gold hoard. It's not a significant part of the monetary system. And silver is not part of the monetary system at all. It used to be pocket change for millions of people, but it's not even there anymore. All right. If you don't mind, could you name more specific pumper channels, like are Mike Baloney and Peter Schiff pumpers? No, they're well, depends on what you call pumpers. Mike and Peter sell product. So they're always going to want, it's just like if you're a real estate agent. There's never been a better time to buy a home. There's never been a better time to sell a home. And if you're selling gold or silver, there's always an argument to buy gold or silver. Why? As we talked about, if you were listening early, if you weren't, go back and listen. I don't think you were here because you asked a question about Mountain House. There is always a possibility that you may need gold or silver. So why not buy it now? And you can always trot out the arguments. But the point is, they're never going to tell you. They're always going to say better a day early than 10 years early than a minute too late. There's some truth to that. But the question is, how much? And they're never going to tell you that you can have too much gold or silver. Why? Because they're going to sell you. You can never have too much, right? No, but there's a whole variety of channels, people who write newsletters, people, you can go through them all. Actually, do the exercise yourself. Say to yourself, what is the person saying? And then say to yourself, is it true? Oftentimes it's not false information. It's just what's the likelihood, and does it help or hinder selling gold? Does it help or hinder selling silver? Does it help or hinder getting you interested in reading their newsletter? And then make your own determination. There's no bright line test whether someone's pumping or not. Michael Jordan. Let's see. Peterson. Well, it depends on your definition of pumping. Remember, Mike Maloney said that if in 2011 that this decade would be the greatest wealth transfer in history. He's drawn all. Now, he may believe all this stuff. So there's a question is that you don't have to be a pumper, but you can be completely wrong because you have gold or silver derangement syndrome, and you believe that the money supply means this, and then from the money supply, if it gets to this level, then gold. One of the things he always says is gold and silver do an accounting. I haven't seen that accounting. Well, then you could say he's just not wrong, he's early. He could just be wrong. And again, it's not their motives. You just have to examine. You can't accept what anyone says, whether they have a motive or not, about where they think the future is going to be, because nobody knows. And unfortunately, people hang on every word of these people who project and prognosticate and make predictions. I always hear, Martin Armstrong says this, Peter Schiff. They're all saying stuff. And then if you go back over the last 10 years, you say, well, they've said this stuff for 10 years. Hasn't come true. Does that mean they don't have good analysis? No, they have good analysis. They could have assumptions wrong. The world cannot be the way they thought it was. The world could have changed. Their model should have changed. They don't know. And what's amusing is the more that people listen to a certain prognosticator, the more they believe them, even if they're wrong, and they continue to be wrong because you've bought into their methodology of analysis. And you now understand how Peter Schiff thinks. You now understand how Mike Maloney thinks. You now understand how whoever it is thinks. But you're never saying to yourself, what's the flaw? Why are they not correct? And then your easy answer is, well, they're not just wrong. They're not wrong. They're just early. But what if they are wrong? Not what if they're bad or they're pumping. That's not the issue. What is preventing their projections or their predictions from coming true? That's what people don't ask. They just assume they're dealing with an infallible analysis, an infallible analyst, because he's so smart. He's got all these people watching him on YouTube. He must know what he's talking about. That's the purpose of my channel, is to go through and say, oh, maybe there's an error here. They'll never admit when they're wrong. That's the biggest hubris. Reds can never raise rates, and they raise rates. Fed can't raise rates. Next thing they're going to do is lower rates. That doesn't happen. Well, they didn't raise as much as I thought as they said they would. You're still 100% incorrect. So they couldn't raise rates. They raised them. They raised them 8 times. You said they couldn't raise them. The next thing they were going to do is lower them, and the next thing they did was raise them 8 times. How is that being right? Well, they never normalized them. You can keep pushing the goalpost out. You have to look for this when listening to people who do analysis. All right, let's see. And again, it's not whether you're pumping. I care less about pumping. I care about is when somebody gives you information, sometimes it's cherry-picked for a reason. They're trying to sell you silver. They're trying to sell you gold. Sometimes it's cherry-picked, but it doesn't mean anything. Sometimes it's cherry-picked, and it only means something, or it can be negated if there's another fact that you're not aware of, that they're either not aware of, or they're just not telling you because they don't care to look past whatever that piece of information is. Just like central banks are buying gold. That is all I need to know. No, you need to know more than that. You need to know which central banks, how much gold they're buying, how much that's worth in the entire financial system. But that's not what you hear. You hear all these, central banks are buying gold. That is all I need to know. They know what is coming. There is a financial collapse coming. And in the reset, they are going to have a gold back yuan. Complete nonsense. The amount of gold that central banks are buying is very small. And the biggest central banks that are buying, and really only 2, and they're Kazakhstan and Russia, and they both have significant gold deposits in their backyard, and they have crappy currency. So it makes sense for them to turn their crappy currencies into gold. And one of them's under sanctions. That's Russia. But that's not how they explain it to you. They explain it to you as like, what does Russia know that we don't know? Or Chinese are smart. They read Sun Tzu. All right, gold is money. Stacking assets. So Maloney is not Peter. No, we're not talking about Maloney or Peter. You have to analyze. Pumper is a generic term. I'm not calling either of them pumpers. You have to look at analysis. I use a generic term pumper, but every person who has a channel who promotes gold or silver and has been wrong about the price direction, you have to look at and say why. And then you have to look at and say, is there any other information? See, what the biggest problem people have is they watch a documentary on something, and then they assume that is all I need to know. I saw 2 hours, and he is very good, and he explained everything. Everything? He explained everything. That is all you need to know. That's the problem I have. That's not pumping. That's not even a cut against somebody. I don't know everything. Mike doesn't know anything. Joe doesn't know everything. Peter doesn't know everything. Matt doesn't know everything. No one knows everything. But what most people do is they listen to certain analysis, and basically what happens in the silver and gold community, they all repeat the same thing. So you don't hear anything new. And then if you hear someone say something different, shill, disinformation agent. That's my issue with the whole thing. No one's really digging in beyond what they hear on a YouTube, and then they repeat it to each other. Let's see. Okay. Scott Wardell, we can get a petition on Jackson Pollock. Yes. All but one of his crap, in my view. I am right. The market is stupid. Buy it, I dare you. Let's see. Stacky's ass. You have to determine who a pumper is. Remember, even if you are a pumper, doesn't mean that you don't have sound analysis. It just means you believe in something. And again, you want to believe in something, that's fine. But why do you believe in it? Why does the person who's promoting it believe in it? What's their incentive? What's your incentive in believing it? Now remember, if your incentives align with the person, for example, I pump mugs. I promote mugs. If you like mugs and I like mugs, that's a beautiful relationship. Why? Because you're going to buy mugs from me. If I pump silver, you like silver, I convince you silver is good. I come on every night. I tell you why silver is good. You shake your head. Yeah, silver's good. Thanks, Smaulgld. Silver is good. That's why a lot of people get mad at me, because I don't come on every night and tell you silver's set to skyrocket. A lot of people, once they get into what I call silver derangement syndrome, all they want to hear is reasons why. And I get people annoyed all the time. They get pissed off that I'm not promoting silver. Don't you think it's a good time to buy now? Wouldn't you be buying silver now? Isn't silver going to go up? If you have hopes for silver going up, what do you need me to tell you for? I'm not an investment advisor. All right, let's see. What else do we got? Jeffrey Gotts, love this channel for the logic. Most people don't want to hear it, Jeffrey. They want to hear set to skyrocket. They want to hear the same thing they've heard on every other channel. JB stupid. Hard to be right. If they print just enough money to prevent the collapse. The Fed gets it wrong, we're toast. Yep. Let's see. Philip Kennedy. If there are only 1 billion ounces of investment grade silver. No. See, when people make up this stuff, first of all, 1 billion ounces pretty much gets mined every year. This other thing is, then all the gold, once they use it, it gets thrown away and you never see it again. That's nonsense. Apple has a program where they reclaim. There's much reclamation going on in industrial and electronic waste. It doesn't just get thrown away. And also, a lot of silver. You think the 600 million ounces worth of American Silver Eagles just got thrown away? They're still out there. You think the billion ounces that I showed you the other night that are locked into ETFs and other funds get thrown away? No. So, Philip, there's 1 billion ounces that I can account for that are just in vaults. Brink's Vault, JP Morgan Vault, ETF Vault, Sprott, and so on. Then we know there's billions of people have some silver in their house, silverware. There's far more than that. Yep, sometimes it takes a mug pumper. Okay, Lewis, what is your perspective analysis game changer view on the U.S. debt clock to paper silver ratio? The U.S. debt clock is stupid. Whatever they put in there for silver is just hype. Jack AGA would define a pumper as juicing the market at the right time with intent to profit after selling, but only if you sell. Trump is a stock pumper. Buy the dip. Yeah, he is. That's for sure. All right, everyone. Well, remember, do your own research. And what I try to look for, I don't find it. You know why you don't find it online on YouTube channels? Because if you want to start a YouTube channel, the easiest thing to do is start pumping silver and repeating everything you've heard elsewhere. There's channels that come up every month. They go, yeah, well, silver's going to go up. Silver's going to go up because the U.S. debt ratio is very high, and China's buying gold. You just say that kind of stuff. Game changer, game over, China to crush the dollar, and you'll get people. I have not found the channel. I think, actually, Belknap, whatever his name, he actually does some very interesting analysis, not pumper analysis. But for the most part, you have to do research at the sources, not at the places that are selling gold or silver or subscriptions. You have to go to the central banks. You have to go to the IMF. You have to go to the bullion dealers. You have to go to the Silver Institute. You have to go to the World Gold Council. You have to go where the data is and not get the shined up version from some channel who read something on Zero Hedge and just read it to you and then tells you Russia is buying gold hand over fist. Okay, what does that mean? I mean, unless you know, and they don't give you that context. It's funny, sometimes when I get published by Zero Hedge, they don't put in all of my analysis. They show the charts. All right, well, thank you very much for listening, and let's see if we got any other. I like the way you created a crisis currency store. Yep. All right, let's see. All right, everyone, thank you very much, and we will see you tomorrow. Have a good night. Don't forget your mugs. Here, I'll give you the link. Just go here. It all happens here. Stacking assets. I just want to know your opinion. I didn't mean to get you fired up. I always get fired up. That's the purpose of the channel. Yeah, no, I just don't like to, start calling people out and calling them names and everything. I think it's a general trend that people are not going to spend the time explaining everything to you. Remember, if you're selling something, too much information is not going to win the day. They're going to tell you everything you need to know. They're going to tell you maybe it's everything you need to know. They're going to tell you the bits that are going to get you excited. See, I tell you the stuff that gets you pissed off or gets you maybe a little depressed about it. That's why the channel isn't, I mean, I don't know, maybe other reasons, but people don't want to hear a full analysis. They're like, either they have no attention span, they just want to know what they need to know so they can go out and buy whatever they need to buy to get rich, or they just want to hear confirmation that they're on the right track. They don't want to hear, they don't want to become Hamlet. They don't want to say, well, I heard that maybe there's this graphene thing out there and that the amount of silver that they're using in electronics has been down for the last 7 years. I don't know what that means. And then they just hear something. Don't worry about that. Silver's set to skyrocket. Oh, yeah, well, okay, well, that's good. They'd rather listen to that channel because they don't want to have to think about it. I understand that. Unless you're interested in something, why do you want to think too much about silver? But once you get silver derangement syndrome, all you want to hear about is why silver's set to skyrocket. And the reason you want to hear that is because it's been going down for 7 years. You've been holding on to it. All right, I got to go. Thank you very much.